must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Way back in 1998, the late Secretary General of the United Nations, by name Kofi Annan, thought of an idea, brought an idea of saying the only way to bring world order, where crimes committed that are not punishable in local courts, local countries, regional courts, could be taken to an international crimes court. The Rome Statute and Rome Treaty of 1998 July was an offspring of already cooked DSGE intelligence system mechanism to keep Africa under check. Up to date, the French government pays 70% of the salaries of the International Criminal Court, from the porter to the judge, to the prosecutor, and the rest of the other people. This was a project of Kofi Annan and the Kofi Annan Foundation, followed by George Soros as an accomplice of Kofi Annan, brought in by Luis Moreno Campo and the entire system of the West, some countries in the West, to keep check on African countries that did not agree with the policies of the French and to their policies of Western culture. The International Criminal Court Chief Prosecutor Luis Moreno Campo agreed in all this that yes, he has been picking money, extra monies, and we followed the story together with my group in France, powerful investigators in France who worked together with me. And we found out that, truly speaking, Luis Moreno Campo, Fernandez Gumedi, the former judge, the president of the International Criminal Court, laundered money, some coming from American banks themselves. This evidence was put in the ICC. In the case of Bashir versus the chief prosecutor, I filed an application, which I still have, and which I'm going to publicize again, so that people can know that I was right. I've been vindicated because the American friends now have found that my credibility is real, that I was right when I stood up to say this court is corrupt. This court launders money, $17 million of United States money, laundered through Bahamas, through New York banks, back to Ocampo's personal assistant, by then called Fernandez Gumedi Silvia, who later on rose to the ranks of becoming the president of International Criminal Court. It has taken us time, energy, efforts, resources to investigate the corruption scandal that have rocked the International Criminal Court. Why should African countries continue to be in the ICC, yet even the superpowers like America are saying no, we have enough courts to try our own people? Viewers, it has taken Americans over 20 years to listen to our voices, when we told Rainberger in Nairobi that this court is a corrupt court.
Today, on the eve of September the 11th, I want to deliver a clear and unambiguous message on behalf of the President of the United States. The United States will use any means necessary to protect our citizens and those of our allies from unjust prosecution by this illegitimate court. We will not cooperate with the ICC. We will provide no assistance to the ICC, and we certainly will not join the ICC. We will let the ICC die on its own. After all, for all intents and purposes, the ICC is already dead to us.
A case of the Kenyan people. These cases in Kenya, the chief prosecutor called Fatou Bensouda put serious statements at the end of the cases, discharge and termination. In legal language, these cases pose a very serious threat in the future. What the people of Kenya can do, and they should do, is today to wrap up the work envelope. Because until this envelope is sealed, thrown in Indian Ocean, the chief prosecutor in the future will come and look for that envelope, use it to incriminate people again. It brings me back to the situation. America is sealing its journey out of the ICC. Why do you wait? Why don't you take this opportunity to seal your journeys out of the ICC? America is quitting, warning that it cannot no longer be a party to such an obnoxious court, a court that has no powers, that talks from this side and vomits from the other side, a court that cuts and pastes evidence, a court that buys witnesses, a court that incites incentives, gives incentives to witnesses of a passport and a relocation, then you tell lies about people. A court that sentences you as per the words there. Why should you leave a country that has a jury that checks on what the judges would do, the excesses of judges, and go to a country, a court that has no jury? Time has come for Africa to think. Do we need this court? Does Africa need this court?
Several African leaders are on their way to Japan for TICAD conference that takes place, or is taking place in Japan this week. This was a conference that was initiated by Japan in 1993 and continues to rotate between Japan and Africa, which is co-ventured by the United Nations, World Bank, and other international UNDP bodies of the world. But the most important thing that comes out as African leaders jet into Japan is, do we benefit much from these conferences? How many people in Africa do benefit from these conferences? One strand of the reasoning of the School of Thought of Africa, Africa School of Thought, is the conferences are very good area of discussion, of reviewing and fatigue evaluation of what projects have been done and what projects need to be done. But the question remains, do we really tangibly see the fruits coming out to the ordinary citizens of Africa? This last night, I had a tweet with Madame Byanyima, who is the executive director of Oxfam. She sent out a tweet to say, can friends write how many sins, 7 sins that the G7 have committed to bring about the hardships in the world? Believe me or not, in that conference there was a Ramaphosa in Paris, and a Ramaphosa was not recognized until it has made news internationally about Ramaphosa's recognition and being called an identified person. Does Africa learn from these hiccups, mishaps that occur in these conferences? That is one strand. The second strand are countries that are inviting us to go to their places. Are they inviting us because of the rivalry between the superpowers themselves? I've only seen almost all the superpowers have been inviting people for the French conference, American conference, Africa conference, China Africa conference, Russia Africa conference, now Japan Africa conference. To these conferences come in good heart. We have seen conferences being duplicated. Qatar Africa conference, Saudi Arabia Africa conference, UAE Africa conference. These conferences must teach us something. And the something that we must be taught is Africa must begin to hold and host AU, Africa Summit Conference, where the big leaders can come and view and see what can be done on the continent. It will help us, it will make us very valuable, expressing our values, putting forward our values, what Africa stands for. As much as I encourage the discussions, and hopefully African leaders will learn from what experiences that Japan has gone through from the Second World War, being bombed upside down to a superpower in the world in terms of trade, in terms of economy, in terms of defense security. I believe Africa can do the same. And I believe one day we shall have the Africa Summit calling all the superpowers, including the heads of states of those countries in the world, to come to our African continent. Thank you.
The day is 8th of October. The show is Good Morning Africa. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. It It is a good morning here in Africa, good morning in Europe, a good afternoon in other parts of the world, and good evening to places like Australia, where we normally have a lot of our viewers watching us from, and the Far East. Right now, it's way into the afternoon towards the early evening. So thank you so much, regardless of where you're watching us from. It's a very warm welcome to you as we continue to get the news from across the continent and also here in Kenya. So today it will be the other way around. We normally start with what is making headlines in Kenya, which we will do that. And I see in the front pages of the Kenya newspapers is just one story about the inside police killer squad and 3 civilians, 3 detectives, and 3 hours of terror. Court stand as informer gives chilling account on how police officers executed lawyer and his friends in botched cover-up. So that seems to be the headlines in all of the 3 Kenyan leading newspapers there. The Star newspapers are the same, and of course the Daily Nation also has the same. So that we will look at much later, but today, as I said, we'll do things just a bit different. So instead, we will start with the news making headlines in Africa, and then later Dr. Matanga will join me as we look at the topic of the day, together with the legacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta, achievements, obstacles, and the way forward. And also now, something very important, especially after what happened over a week ago at the Likoni ferry, where the bodies of the mother and her daughter have not been retrieved yet. And so who is responsible for safety when we are on the roads, railway, and waters in here in Kenya? So that is a conversation that we will be having, and you do not want to miss. But for right now, let us just get into the business of Africa, and we start with Uganda, where the 6 broadcast stations in Uganda risk having their licenses revoked after an investigation by the industry regulator found that they breached broadcasting standards while covering events that followed the arrest of pop star and presidential aspirant Bobi Wine. Now, the politician supporters held demonstrations in April in the capital Kampala after he was detained. Bobi Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, has been a thorn in the side of President Yoweri Museveni since he was elected as a member of parliament in 2017. He has been arrested several times and is currently facing a charge of annoying the president. A very interesting charge there, I might add. And Bobi Wine, and of course, the Uganda Communications Commission's UCC found that NTV, NBS, BBS, Bukede TV, and Radio Sapietia broadcast broke various laws, including the license terms and conditions and the Press and Journalists Act. The broadcasts are part of a trend of media reports that contain misinterpretation of information, views, facts, and events in a manner that was likely to mislead or cause alarm to the public, and that is according to Ugandan Communications Commission there. Very interesting there, I must say, coming from a country like I am in, such news is truly absurd. And we go to Mozambique. A prominent election observer has been shot dead in a ruling party stronghold in southeastern Mozambique ahead of elections next week. Some reports said Anastasio Matavele, the head of a local election observer mission, was gunned down as he was driving away from a workshop in Sai City, which others said he was killed after opening a workshop to train other observers. President Filipe Nyusi is running for a second term in Tuesday's election as the ruling Frelimo party's candidate, and his main challenger in Renamo's of Sufo Momade also will be the main challenger. Mozambique is still recovering from a brutal 16-year civil war which ended in 1992. And we go to Ethiopia, where President Sahle Work Zewde has given much-awaited details of moves to liberalize the telecoms industry, saying 2 private firms will be given licenses to operate in the sector before the end of July 2020. State-owned Ethio Telecom currently has a monopoly, being the only company to provide voice, SMS, and data services. It has more than 41 million customers in a country with a population of over 100 million. Multinational firms including Safaricom, MTN Group, Orange, and Vodafone have all shown an interest in bidding for the licenses. Speaking at the opening of Ethiopia's parliament, the president said Ethiopia would continue with the economic reforms introduced by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed since he came to power in 2018. And we head to Ghana, where students have taken to the streets of the capital, Accra. Took to the streets of the capital, Accra, to protest against mass failures and elitism in the law profession. Only 128 out of 1,820 students passed the 2019 law school entrance exams, representing a failure rate of about 90%. The high failure rate reflected an attempt to sideline ordinary people from accessing legal education in the favor of the country's elite, the protesters said. And we move to Sudan, where Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry said on Sunday it is working to remove Sudan from the United States list of state sponsors of terrorism. The information shared in a tweet followed a meeting in Riyadh between King Salman and the head of Sudan's Transitional Sovereign Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, and Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. The designation as a state sponsor of terrorism dates back to 1993 of allegations that former President Omar al-Bashir Islamist government was supporting terrorism. Inclusion on the list makes Sudan ineligible for desperately needed debt relief and financing from lenders like the International Monetary Fund and World Bank. Removal will potentially open the door for foreign investment. And we go to Rwanda now, where authorities in the country have arrested an American evangelist, Mr. Greg Ashoff, for holding an illegal meeting in a public area. Ashoff, who has worked in Rwanda since 2003, was arrested alongside his son after publicly airing his grievances over the closure of his church and radio station last year. He was arrested minutes after arriving for the press conference he had called at a bar next to the National Stadium in Kigali. And forced displacement has reached a record high in recent years. Nearly 71 million people have been uprooted from their homes, and more than one-third are refugees. The rest are displaced within their own countries. This is according to the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, Mr. Filippo Grandi. Grandi says he plans to convene the first global refugee forum in just over 2 weeks, and the main of the forum, he says, is to address and seek to resolve forced displacement, one of the greatest global challenges of this century. He was speaking at the opening of the UNHCR's annual week-long refugee conference. And now we come back to South Sudan, where lack of independence has crippled the justice system in South Sudan. A new report by Human Rights Watchdog has shown it suggests that government officials have allowed impunity to flourish over monstrous crimes. In the "Do you think we will prosecute ourselves and no prospects for accountability in Sudan" report reveals prosecutors only follow the directives of the executives. Without such directives, the report says the prosecutors do not investigate cases of human rights violations, war crimes, and crimes against humanity committed since the brutal conflict broke out in December 2013, prosecuting only one case. That is very interesting there in South Sudan. And also still in South Sudan, and a senior American diplomat says the U.S. will not provide financial assistance to the government of South Sudan unless it addresses key issues of corruption. Last year, Transparency International ranked South Sudan as the third most corrupt country in the world. It attributed the reasons to weak democratic foundation and the manipulation of undemocratic and populist politicians who use it to their advantage. And now we go to Cameroon and matters affecting Anglophone, and 25 persons detained at the Kandegui prison in connection with the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions were released on Friday. All charges against them were dropped on Friday by the Yaoundé tribunal following a decision from the head of state to pardon a 333 persons standing trial before military courts in the country in connection to the crisis in the Amazonia regions. Dropping the charges on Friday, the president of the Yaoundé Military Tribunal, Colonel Abega Benzoe Eko, told the now ex-detainees that they have the head of state to thank for the decision. And we end with matters Biafra, where a member of the House of Representatives, Mr. Bede Eke, wants Igbos to have the opportunity of governing Nigeria in 2023. Eke argues that following the presidency come to the argues that allowing the presidency to come to the southeast will help to foster the needed peace. The lawmaker notes that apart from Nnamdi Azikiwe, the zone has not produced a leader in Nigeria. Bede Eke, a member of the House of Representatives from Baise Okopal constituency of Imo State, also added that Igbo presidency in 2023 will put to an end the agitation for Biafrans. And that is the latest from Africa this morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're watching us from across the globe. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and thank you very much for joining me this morning here. Just about 25 minutes past 11 a.m. here in Nairobi. Okay, fine. The last news, of course, we just will take through and look at this news very, very quickly and in more details as we wait for Dr. Matanga to join me in a bit. But there you go. Biafrans, I can see you're very present here. And their representative, Bede Eke, has said perhaps the solution to stop the Biafra agitation is if, Nigeria will have a president from the Biafra, from the Igbo people. I don't know if, and he thinks that will end the agitation for Biafra to want to have their own country. Talk to me and let me know what are your thoughts this morning. And let's just start with the news we started with this morning in Uganda. 6 broadcast stations in Uganda risk having their licenses revoked after an investigation by the industry regulator found that they breached broadcasting standards while covering events that followed the arrest of pop star and presidential aspirant Bobi Wine. That was last year. No, earlier this year. When was it? I think around... Was it around April? I remember when Bobi Wine, I think, spent 2 nights at a prison and... for a mistake, for a law that he broke last year in July for holding, protesting against the high tariffs, the data tariffs, the phone, airtime tariffs that was introduced by the country. So he protested, but then he was not arrested. So they decided to arrest him in April this year. If I'm not wrong, it has to be April, if not just thereabout. Please correct me on that. I'm not quite, but I think it was in April. So Bobi Wine got to spend 2 days in prison. And it is the manner in which they arrested him. Remember, he went and locked himself somewhere, and the police in Uganda literally threw tear gas. It is the manner and the fracas and the chaos that came with this arresting. So, of course, the media was there. They got to, this was airing live in Ugandan major or leading broadcasters there, and the government was not very happy. Remember, even after that, some broadcasting houses were temporarily closed, and they were threatened. If they continue, the gossip tax. It's called the gossip tax. Was it really the gossip tax that Mr. Bobi Wine was protesting about? Please get me the right name. I don't remember. I don't recall it being called the gossip tax, but I know it was a tax on airtime, social media airtime, or something like that. Please clarify that for me. Look for that information and let's share with the rest of our viewers. So that happened in July last year. So they arrested him. So anybody that aired the events that took place, especially during his arrest, all the broadcasters at the government came very hard on them, and others were faced with, fears of even being closed completely. And so right now, apparently there were some investigations being done by the Ugandan communications commissions here that found that, a television like NTV, which is Kenyan-based, we have an NTV here in Kenya, and the NTV in Kenya is the mother, broadcaster, and the owner of the Nation newspaper here, one of the leading daily newspapers here in Kenya, and so they have a sister station in Uganda. But I think I don't know if the NTV executives in Uganda, are from Kenya, being that Kenya is the mother, broadcaster. So perhaps they took a few Kenyans there, and a few Kenyans who went there, they thought, we just got to do these things the way we do them in Kenya, where somehow there's a freedom of speech and the freedom of, you remember, because even after, I think during the swearing in of the NASA leader Raila Odinga, the swearing in that took place at Uhuru Park that the government did not want being aired, it was aired, although some stations were closed for a couple of days. But once the matter was done. And I think the media owners went and contested and went in court and things like that. And I've never heard the government trying to run after these broadcasters and try to harass them in that kind of way. And so I think that's why also there is a rapid growth in the media industry in Kenya, because somewhat we have that space where it's not excellent, but it is relatively good compared to now a country like Uganda, where you cannot put something on air that goes against what the government would want you to air. Like, it is seriously regulated, so you cannot have a free mind, you cannot have a free speech, you cannot have something that is not very favorable that is not favorable to the government, basically. So these broadcasting houses that were able to air these materials and the radio stations that had all these events live, now they will be the others risk their licenses being revoked. And so the Ugandan communications commissions found that NTV, which I said the mother broadcasting house is here in Kenya, and NBC, BBS, Bukedi TV, and Radio Sapientia broke various laws, including the license terms and conditions and the Press and Journalist Act. I would be interested to know what the Press and Journalist Act say there in Uganda. And the broadcasts are part of a trend of media reports that the government says contains misrepresentation of information, views, facts, and events in a manner that was likely to mislead or cause alarm to the public. What do you mean mislead? That part is even misleading to me, because I think the broadcasting houses were just airing what was happening, the manner in which the Ugandan authority were harassing Mr. Bobi Wine. And that is what I don't think they made up anything outside of what those people were doing. And so they were not happy that that went out to the public. And I think out of that incident, Mr. Bobi Wine garnered, even for those who really did not like his way of thinking and his ideology or whatever it is, who are not very much connected to whatever it is he was trying to sell in terms of politics and policies, he was able to gather a lot of sympathy. And now that worked towards even increasing in popularity. And now he became a very serious threat. Remember, just the other day, he is, the red beret and the red T-shirt and the red color is synonymous to his party, the People's Movement. But the government came out and said, you know what, this has been gazetted to be an official Ugandan Defense Force uniform, so no member of public is supposed to wear this. Obviously, that was targeted to Bobi Wine and his party or movement. It has not been registered yet. I don't know if it will be registered because he calls it People Movement. I don't know if it will be registered. It is not a registered party, so it's just a movement there. So there we are there in Uganda. And Mo Haji Abdi is saying Bobi Wine is petty. Sure. But don't we all have a right to express ourselves? Don't we? All right. On the ground of time. All right. So keep writing. All right, keep writing to me and let me know what you think. And we should have freedom to exercise as much as, there's a beauty in diversity. Imagine if you only had one, like the way it used to be here in Kenya. There's a time you only had one party with President Moi, and those days he was acting the way you see President Museveni act right now. If you had any, thoughts that were not in line with the ruling party, you'll be tortured. And, when we do not have a multi-democracy. So people had to lose their lives and fight for this space that we enjoy today. That's why we're able to sit here and talk and criticize and just air our thoughts. So I think it's important for a healthy country, for a healthy democracy, to just have that space that allows a divergence of ideas and opinions. I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm happy that in this country that I'm at, we are able to enjoy that. Perhaps not 100%, but, it's relatively good compared to... And so, all right, so we go to Ghana yesterday, and there was a protest. There are some students who were protesting in the streets of Accra. They're the law students, and I think there was a certain also. Even here in Kenya, the Kenya School of Law, because you have to study law for 4 years. So if you want to be an advocate or a lawyer, then you have to go through Kenya School of Law, I think, for another 2 years. And so there was it was said that there was like a mass failure of students because the management there, I don't know, because they want to make more money, so they just decide this year only a number of students will pass, and so they decide to fail. So there was such a scandal there. I don't know if the legal minds in this country have worked to resolve that, but these were the same protests that were happening in Accra yesterday, and it says they were protesting against the mass failures and elitism in the law profession, and it is said that only 128 students out of 1,820 that passed the 2019 law school entrance exams. So there was a 90% failure. 128 out of 1,820. So apparently, these 128 that were able to pass comes from influential families, comes from people who are known, or maybe they're paying their way up there. So the students who just are naturally bright or are working hard and they're there on their own merit, they fail to get these positions because they are given to the elites, the kids of the people, of the who is who in the country. There in Ghana, so they took to the streets yesterday. How do you have a 90% failure? Something must be seriously wrong with that system. 128 out of 1,820. Come on now, law cannot be that difficult. I know it's hard, but come on now. So they were out in the streets yesterday, of course, protesting that. So let's see how that will work out here today. And we come to Sudan. So over the weekend, I remember yesterday I was reading nearly the same news where United States of America came out and said they've been hearing, calls for the United States to remove Sudan in one of the countries that have been blacklisted as supporting terrorism in the world. So over the weekend, Saudi Arabia came out and added its voice to this, and this calls for Sudan to be removed as one of the countries that are supporting terrorism across the world. I don't know if United States will listen to Saudi Arabia, because United States and Saudi Arabia, they seems to be having this very unholy relationship, very close, especially with the coming of President Donald Trump. You see Saudi Arabia getting away with stuff. But anyway, I think because it is the biggest supplier to the United States with their oil, and also it is the biggest buyer of United States arms, the guns and the military equipment. It buys a lot of it from the United States. So there's this economical interest that both countries have that has overrode even the most important things in the world, things like human rights abuse. We saw the journalist Khashoggi, who was killed in Turkey, in Saudi Arabia's Turkey's embassy, and it is now apparent that MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, must have ordered for the murder of this. He was an American, but he's from Saudi, and that ordered for his killing. The guy was turned into mincemeat. Even he's dismembered. His body has never been found, and that was that. But you can see how the United States treated that matter. Even the United Nations Special Rapporteur that was given this job to go and investigate and bring a report, they said MPS did this, the Saudi Crown Prince, but nobody's holding Saudi Arabia, accountable. Of course, it contributes a lot of money to the United Nations. That's why even with the continuing killings they're having in Yemen, and if you've seen the images coming from Yemen and the children there and the women who are suffering, but you see that the United Nations is just turning the face away because Saudi Arabia is one of the countries that contributes very highly in the United Nations. So they can't. I think they're untouchables. I don't know. That is how unfair it is. So now, anyways, there are another voice that has come out and is urging the United Nations to remove Sudan in the list of countries that support terrorism across the globe. And of course, Sudan was put on this list, blacklisted in 1993, over allegations that former President Omar al-Bashir's Islamist government was supporting terrorism. And after the now Prime Minister, Mr. Hamdok, came into power, now he's saying, you know what, now we have a new regime, we have new leadership, but it's about time that Sudan should be removed from the list of countries supporting terrorism across the world. So that Saudi Arabia has come out now in support of this. Will the United States change its mind? Will it add any weight into that? I think it might to some degree, because as I have mentioned there, Saudi Arabia and the US have this very unholy relationship. I call it very unholy, because when you see the matters in which the interest in which that brings them together, sometimes it works, it beats the other things that a country like United States stand for. So it beats the whole logic. But so let's see if Saudi Arabia's voice in wanting Sudan to be removed from the blacklist of being the countries that one of the countries that supports terrorism in the world, if Saudi Arabia's voice here will matter. So this is something that I'll be following very, very keenly, and I'll be bringing you the latest here. Kevin Kalende, you're saying Ugandan opposition leaders misleading people, creating a very awkward political system that does not gain the people. Them who are engineering the system is becoming a business, not a fine thing, and we have to act to sober our people from an illiterate system of governance. We have laws, let's follow them than breaking apart. We need to build on. Okay, Kevin Kalenda, I really tried to to decode your message, the manner in which you've written it, but thank you so much for talking to us this morning. Nabirie Sandra, you're saying I'm right. In what and King's best man, you're saying Biafra want them freedom with British. We not want Nigerian before British government join Biafra. Okay. See, now you're giving me a very difficult time to decode. And Kevin, you're still saying Bobby Wine uses force and hate speech to approach issues, bearing in mind that he's a parliamentarian that can take the disagreements to parliament and right place to argue issues of that kind, but instead he uses mobilizing groups to protest. Isn't that confusing to you, madam? All right, yeah, that is confusing. I think because he's a member of parliament. So being that he's a member of parliament, so some of these grievances, parliament will be the right platform to take and to try to, and I think he will be having immunity even in parliament, right? Or they don't have it there, because I know in the Kenyan parliament, whatever you say in the corridors of parliament, inside parliament, you have immunity for that. So he would go there and he would, advance and talk about the issues. I think where I would have a problem with Kevin Kalende is where the infringement, of freedom. I think that is, I don't know. Are you okay with that? Like right now, he can't even be in a company of over 3 people. I think the last he was released from jail, that was the conditions he was given. He should not be found in the company of more than 3 people. That means he cannot even be with all of his family, because that will be a group, and that he would have broken the law. It is the infringement of freedom of speech, freedom of movement, and things like this that I don't know that perhaps other people would find to be a problem. But that is that. Thank you so much. And keep writing to us. Now, let's go to, of course, this report by the United Nations Human Rights Commission here over the displacement of people, and I think Africa, we are suffering from that right now. High number of refugees are increasing, be it from Amazonia going to another country, or Biafrans going to other countries, of South Sudanese who are scattered across the globe, or is it Congolese, or is it Burundians, or is it, because the other days Tanzania also was forcefully wanted to return over 200,000 refugees back to Burundi, and others were not very happy about it. Remember, after the attempted coup that happened in Burundi in 2015, when Mr. Paul Biya had a referendum to change the constitution, that resulted into another near break of civil, war, but there was chaos in that year. And so a lot of refugees ran to Tanzania, and now Tanzania has been saying, your place is safe. So what we're going to do is take you back, to Burundi, because I think Burundi is safe. And of course, Burundi right now is preparing for another general election. Is it next year or thereabout, the other year, thereabout? And so they did not want to go. And even the United Nations Human Rights Refugee Commission came out and said, come on, you cannot force people to go to a place where they don't want to go, because that is one of the laws that governs the world. If somebody feels that their life is at threat, you cannot forcefully return them to that place they ran from in the first place. So Tanzania, I think, has had the burden, and that is the burden that some countries get to shoulder out of this crisis of refugees and across the world. So according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Mr. Filippo Grandi, there's this report that was given. So they're saying right now the level of displacements, people's displacements across especially Africa is on an all-time high. And recent years, nearly 71 million people have been uprooted from their own homes. That is very sad. And to know that Africa contributes to a huge number of this, I think is very sad. And more than 1/3 are refugees. The rest are displaced within their own countries. Others, like here in Kenya, when we're having, those electioneering periods, people decide, I can't stay in this area. Or there are people who were displaced in 2007. They're called internally displaced people, IDPs. Others have never been resettled until today. So they're saying even those refugees of that kind that have been displaced in their own countries also is on the increase. So I think this is something that is urgent. This is something that should be looked at. And especially, what are the reasons, what are the root causes of such a thing to happen? And the refugees, refugees and numbers across the world keeps, increasing by the day. Okay, so of course we'll talk about Cameroon in a very short bit, and also Biafra, and but now let's just look at South Sudan, and there's a report called "Do you think we will prosecute ourselves? No prospects for accountability in South Sudan." Very interesting name for a report there. Do you think we'll prosecute ourselves? No prospects of accountability in South Sudan. And this is what is happening in this report. And there's been a lot of reports coming from South Sudan lately. I think the whole world is just worried about South Sudan. I am worried about South Sudan over here. But in part of the report says a lack of independence has crippled the justice system in South Sudan. A new report by the Human Rights Watchdog has shown it suggests that government officials have allowed impunity to flourish over monstrous crimes. All right? So now, in the report, it reveals that prosecutors only follow the directives of the executive. Public prosecutors only follow the directive of the executive. By executive here, I mean the presidency, because that is the executive, right? And without such directives, the report says prosecutors do not investigate cases of human rights violations, war crimes, and crimes against humanity committed since brutal conflict broke out in December 2013, prosecuting only one case. So in 2013, apparently, it's only one case that has been prosecuted in South Sudan, and that has been found to have violated human rights there in South Sudan, and war crimes and crimes against humanity there in South Sudan. Like only one person, only one case has been prosecuted since the breaking out of the war in 2013. But now when you go down to the nitty-gritties of what is happening in South Sudan, I'm not surprised with this report, because it is said that the prosecution will not act until the executive gives orders. In other words, the courts will not act on certain cases until they are prompted by the presidency. All right? So it's the president that gives the directive. Now you need to investigate this case. Perhaps they even told the outcome. I don't know. I'm just trying to understand why. Because there should be a separation of powers. That's why we have different, arms of government. So when you have that, when it comes to something so sensitive as human rights violations, public prosecution cannot investigate on their own independently. A government, the presidency, the executive has to give them, a directive to do so. And even with that, only since 2013, only one case has been tried. That tells you. But you know what? Because perhaps a lot of why the government is the one that is having a stronghold, especially on this, is because, they've been mentioned widely. Because some of these human rights crimes, the violations that happen, they happen under the watch of. And it is the soldiers who are fighting behalf of. So I don't think the president would want his soldiers or his people tried. Because a lot of these things, they know what's happening. They know it is my soldiers who are killing and fighting that community or that part of the country. So I'm not surprised by this report. Do you think we will prosecute ourselves? That is what the report is called. So they will not prosecute themselves, even from the name of the report. So if the executive is the one that is giving directions to the prosecutor on what to do, the executive will not shoot themselves on the foot. I don't think so. And so, very interesting there. So, of course, the lack of independence in South Sudan's court system and, of course, other very important institutions there has crippled the justice system. And that is according to this report that came out there. I don't know. Something is to done. Very interesting there. And also in South Sudan, a senior American diplomat says the United States will not provide financial assistance to the government of South Sudan unless it addresses key issues of corruption. I'm exhausted because, we've been talking about this over and over and over. I think also yesterday we spent time talking about South Sudan and matters corruptions. And now here you go. US is one of the leading countries that contributes donor funding highly to South Sudan. And now South Sudan is at the risk of that if they don't address the key issues of that is corruption. And last year, Transparency International ranked South Sudan as the third most corrupt country in the world. And it attributed the reasons to weak democratic foundation and the manipulation of undemocratic and populist politicians who use it to their own advantage. And also, can we just add the lack of independent, justice system there in South Sudan? That could also a very big contributor to the corruption here in South Sudan, because if people, especially who know people in the executive or in the high places, they'll just do things and get away just with impunity, because they know unless the president orders for the prosecutor to take up action, they will likely don't care and will not take up action. And if they do, the government agenda will defeat it. So basically, independent institutions, independent judiciary. It is a problem we're having here in Kenya, but somehow we see as though something is being done, and it's not all rosy here, but at least it's as if something is being done, okay? But in South Sudan, it's nearly non-existent. From 2013, at the break of the civil war, only one case has been tried that goes against human rights violations, and we know how many people have lost lives in South Sudan so far? 400,000 and in counting. And only one case has been tried. Something is seriously wrong. But, judging from, that report's heading, do you think we will prosecute ourselves? Then no prospects for accountability in South Sudan. So I don't think prospects of accountability. And I think for a lot of these countries that are developed, when you see their systems and their institutions, somehow or not somehow, there's a level of accountability that you cannot run away from. And that's why we see there's a lot of the systems there, especially the public service system, is quite streamlined in the first world there. But I think the fact that we don't have that here in Africa, that's why we continue being how we are, because we don't have accountability. Accountability is lacking in our government institutions. Accountability is lacking in public service. Accountability is lacking in the private service, because even the private service, once somebody in the government, in the public service, you can just strike deals and do whatever you want to do, and the law will, and the people in the high places will protect you against the law of the land. So accountability, and the lack of it is, I think, when you do something and you know you'll not be held accountable, I mean, you do things with impunity, and that's what we see happening there in South Sudan. So I'll not even get into the details of it. We talked about it yesterday, but indeed a very independent, judiciary and institutions will be the key for us Africans realizing a prosperous Africa. The failure to which, if we see this interference by the executive, we see the co-dependence and the lack of independence in the very important institutions in our countries. We can't move forward as a continent, not just in South Sudan or in Kenya but in Africa in general. There has to be, a line drawn, especially if a country has to do well. Then the judiciary must work. The wheels of the law must roll the right way, so that people will fear even engaging in corruption. It will be a very high venture. If you think about the consequences, you'll not even dare. Like in the case of South Korea, did you see the president? She's now serving jail time. She did not even commit the crime. Her friend went to there and said, you know what, the president is my friend, so now I need you to do this for me. Got a favor because she's close to the president. But the president herself did not commit that crime. And she knew of it. And perhaps she did not stop. And that was her mistake. But she did not directly gain from this corruption. And then if you come to Africa, that will not even consider corruption. And that's why a country like South Korea, that we were together, like Kenya and South Korea, when Kenya was getting its independence and South Korea, we were at par. And now if you look at South Korea and you look at Kenya, it's like heaven and somewhere else. But like the difference is so broad, you can't even start to explain it. But it's because they've made sure they have institutions and accountability is top of the agenda when it comes to public service. So you can't just do things and get away. And right now, when the heir of Samsung, I think, is having a problem there with the law. So it's and that's why they do much better compared to us here in Africa. So now let's talk about Cameroon and 25 persons detained at the Condé prison in connection with the crisis in the northwest and southwest regions were released on Friday. All charges against them were dropped on Friday by the Yaoundé Military Tribunal. I think we talked about this yesterday, but we talked about, of course, the release of opposition leader in Cameroon there, Mr. Maurice Kamto, who was released after the talks on Friday, which I was thinking, why do you release this guy after the talks have been completed? Why is the president making this decree? If he really... he said this in the name of the peace of the national dialogue. That's why he was doing it, because he thought it would be nice reaching out. But he should have reached out earlier so that he ensured this guy was out and gave his opinion in the concluded dialogue that concluded last Friday in Yaoundé there. So Maurice Kamto did not get to take part in that. He is the opposition, of course, in Cameroon, and of course Ambazonians have come out and rubbished those talks. I think a lot of them, those who were present, walked out. And I was just reading the news here. Was it yesterday here? One of you was saying that even for the Ambazonians who purported to have attended that dialogue, they're being waited for back at home and they'll face prosecution. I don't know what kind of prosecution. I must have read one of those comments here. Gondan Timothy Tutlam, you're saying, I'm wondering if Punchline TV ever talk about an attempt of killing Dr. Riek Machar when the poor guy have to run for all his way to Congo. Yeah, we talk about it every day, Mr. Gondar Timothy Tutlam. We talked about it here every day. Yesterday I did, and that's why I didn't want to get into the nitty-gritties of it. I think because today what I had in the news was a bit different from that. But we talk about it here every day. And that's why he ran for his life. And that is why he's scared of returning to Juba as it is right now. He is in Khartoum because he came back in 2016 and he was forced to flee because he was being attacked and almost killed. And his life is in danger. And he said for President Kiir should assure him that his security will be provided. He will be safe for him to return to Juba. Remember now, they have less than than a month to make sure that whatever they needed to work through the peace agreement, they should before Riek Machar returning to Juba and for them to form the unity government. That is supposed to be in November next month, and now they have less than a month. So let's see if they would have done that by then. But yes, we talk about that here every day, Mr. Gondar. It seems as though you're new here, but welcome and thank you so much for joining us. And Ogebe Omoto Chan, you're saying, Capital, no, we will not prosecute ourselves since we are in the system to accountability. No accountability will take place. Yes, and that was the name of that report there for South Sudan. Do you think we will prosecute ourselves? And then he continues, no prospects of accountability in South Sudan. Very interesting there. So they will not prosecute themselves. The executive is the judiciary, and the judiciary is the executive, and the executive, I think, is the police, and the police is the, I don't know how that works. But yeah, there you go. A very worrying state of affairs there in South Sudan. And this is according to the Human Rights Watchdog report there in South Sudan. So we were talking about Cameroon. And so now, after Maurice Kamuta was released, another 333 people have also, who was standing trial, have been released from the court. And the president of the Yaoundé Military Tribunal, Colonel Abega Mbezoe Eko, came out and said, you know what? The person who saved you from, facing a life sentence is the president, so you should thank him for that. That is what he told the ex-detainees. Very interesting there. So 333 persons standing trial before the military court. Remember, these are civilians who should not be standing trial in a military court. A martial court is meant to try the people in uniform. Remember that, like that kangaroo court that Kabila put in place to try the people who killed his father. He was killed by his bodyguard, I hear, from the stories, yeah? He was killed by the army, Mr. Kabila, his bodyguard, right? So the people who are put in, it was trying all soldiers to have participated in the killing of Kabila Senior, right? Laurent Kabila, the father to Joseph Kabila, the predecessor before Felix Tshisekedi, president of Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo. So they had this martial court, and I was watching the documentary a few years ago, and you would see how the trial went. It was just a kangaroo court, but it was the martial court. It was trying the army officials. But in Cameroon, civilians are being tried in a military tribunal. These are civilians. Are there no courts in Cameroon, actually, that could deal with such matters? But there you go. So there are 333 people were released, and they were standing a trial there in Ambazonia region. So let's just see how this will work out. The talks that ended on Friday, and of course yesterday we talked about it in depth, so I will not even get into much of it. All right, so now let's just turn our focus to Biafra and a member of the House of Representatives, Mr. Bede Eke. Are you guys aware of this person? He's saying now that what Igbos should do, according to him, he's saying Igbos should have the opportunity of governing Nigeria in 2023. And he's arguing that allowing the presidency to come to the southeast will help to foster the needed peace. Now, the lawmaker notes that apart from Nnamdi Azikiwe, the zone has not produced a leader in Nigeria. All right. So Bede Eke, a member of the House of Representatives from Baise, Ngor Okpala constituency of Imo State, also added that an Igbo presidency in 2023 will put to an end the agitation for Biafra. So listen up, Biafra, gather together, and let me tell you something. Mr. Eke, Bede Eke, thinks that for you to stop agitating for Biafra, he's thinking that the solution to stop for the agitation of Biafra land, or the country of Biafra, or the land of Biafra, he's saying is to get an Igbo for Nigerian presidency in 2023. So he has prescribed a solution for this. Please talk to me and let me know what you think, because I'm thinking, I'm thinking, it's not about Igbos wanting to be a president in Nigeria. I think the issue and matter of Biafra goes too deep, not just having an Igbo for a president in Nigeria. But, if you're out there and, I don't know what will be your thoughts on this. Mika TJ Ben, you're saying it is useless talk. You don't want president. What you want is Biafra. We Biafrans, that is according to Emeka, we Biafrans don't need the Nigerian presidency, but restoration of sovereign Biafra Republic. So you don't want this solution that has been prescribed by Bede Eke. He's saying the only thing that will put to rest this agitation of Biafra is to make sure that an Igbo becomes the president of Nigeria in 2023. Let me know if you would vote. Let me know what your thoughts will be on that. If this will be a solution, if this is something that you think will solve the problem. But according to him, he's saying, you know what? This will be the solution. This will be the antidote. This will be something that should solve this crisis of Biafra once and for all. This will be something that will get a permanent solutions, and Igbos will be happy, and Biafrans will be happy, and there will be no more agitation, and it's going to be one happy big Nigeria. And so let me know your thoughts on this. Wilson Jinchigo, you're saying you're watching live from Italy. I will always continue to appreciate you guys for the job well done on behalf of all African Voice. Thank you so much. And Ambazonia must be free. Thank you so much, Wilson Jinchigo. And thank you so much for writing to us this morning. Mo Haji Abdi, you're saying no, it will not. And Emeka Nweke, you're saying the man is a political jobber. Oh, it's a political jobber. So you know him very well. Okay, so he's a member of the House of Representatives, Mr. Bede Eke. All right, so he's saying that apart from Namdi Azikiwe, who I think came from the southeast side, that is the Igbo side, produced a leader in Nigeria, but he's saying that, an Igbo presidency in 2013 will put to an end the agitation of Biafra. So he's saying this agitation for Biafra, wanting to have an independent state, this is something that it should be out of question. The only solution to this matter is making sure Igbos have a leadership. This enjoys, as Kenyans here we like saying, this national cake of the presidency. So in 2023, it should be left to the Igbos. So once Igbos taste the presidency in Nigeria, they should settle down and stop with the agitation of wanting their own country. I don't know, what are your thoughts this morning? Because from what I understand, it's not just wanting to be the president. That has never even been one of the issues I see here when I talk to Biafrans or when we have these conversations. Wanting to be a president of Nigeria is not top of Biafrans' list. It's not even something that they're considering. Biafrans wants to have their own country, and because of they have their own reasons as to why they want to secede. And being given or being the president or being given an opportunity to be the president of Nigeria, I don't think it will, I don't know, you tell me, will it solve anything? Will that be a solution to the problems of Biafrans? Will that bring to an end the agitation for Biafra? Will that solve anything? Will that change the mind of Igbos and other Biafrans? Is that what you want? All right, being the president of Nigeria, will that be the antidote for this? Please talk to me. And let me see, Biargarang. You're saying, Miriam, I don't think the peace of South Sudan will not be successful and it will remove the president until they remove the president, Salva Kiir. So you're saying you don't think the peace of Sudan will not be... Look, I also think it will be successful. I just don't know when that will happen, because they have like a month before, they start the unity government. Remember, they were given 6 months. That was in May. Time has flown so fast, I'm shocked. So next month is the deadline. Remember, there was a deadline in May also that they could not meet from after the handshake last year in September. And this year, during the prayer day, marking the first anniversary of the handshake, President Salva Kiir came out and also made a statement that rubbished a lot of things and a lot of gains that have been made before when he issued what was considered to be a threat to Mr. Riek Machar, saying that if he does not come back to Juba, he will go ahead and form a unity government. So that must have scuffled away even all the gains that had been made in South Sudan, and perhaps got a few players, a bit worried, and stakeholders a bit worried over that. So, and we understand the worries of Mr. Riek Machar about his security. And even when he was coming to Juba, I think last month, he was escorted by the second in command for Sudan's army, Mr. Hemedi, the leader of the Janjaweed, brought him together with the Prime Minister of Mr. Hamdok. He said after the swearing in of the Prime Minister Hamdok, remember Sudan was the one who was leading these talks, the peace talks on behalf of, was spearheading, even when President Omar al-Bashir, because the relationship of these two countries depend on each other. So they need so Sudan needs South Sudan to be stable, and South Sudan needs Sudan to be stable. So it's owing to their geographical, locations and how much the economies are intertwined with each other. So it is important. So Mr. Hamdok, the new Prime Minister of Sudan, took it upon himself after he was sworn in, and his number one agenda was to go to South Sudan and made sure that the peace talks returned, to what they were before, President Omar al-Bashir was ousted in April. So anyway, they went there. It was very lovely. Then he went back, and this came out and said, we're going to make an army, 83,000 strong army. We should all bring our groups together and form one national army. So that will be the first step. And also they promised us that, and the world, that they are committed to meeting the deadline in November. So let's just see. I'm cautiously optimistic, and you can't blame me for it, because after they were not unable to meet the deadline in May, and others also, it's a very dicey situation there. But I'm optimistic, perhaps a bit cautious, but I'm optimistic, and I'm hoping that they will be able to meet this deadline. They have now roughly a month or less to make sure that they start this. So yes, so you're saying that the only piece, BR Garang, you're the one who's prompted back this conversation, will happen only if President Salva Kiir is removed from power. But President Salva Kiir also came out earlier this month and said, the reason why I'm still in power, people are trying to accuse me for sticking in power longer than I should. He said, I don't want to be here longer than you want me to. Matter of fact, if South Sudan was stable right now, we can have an election and I'll be out if the people of South Sudan decide somebody else to be the president. But the longer the unrest continues in South Sudan, he says he does not have a choice, because there are no proper structures of even carrying out an election. That is according to him. That has to be worked out. So he's saying he does not want to be there longer than you want him to. Matter of fact, you're keeping him there very long. If there was some level of stability in South Sudan, he would be out. And if the country was able to have its elections, then and the people of South Sudan, he will be out. But as things stand right now, he says you continue keeping him in office. So you have to deal with that. So let's just be hopeful that they'll be able to beat that deadline in November there in South Sudan. Thank you so much. Emeka Nweke, you're saying the political structure of the contraption Nigeria is in favor of the northern part of the damnable zoological Nigeria. And you're saying, Abol Nyang, you're watching us from Australia. Good evening there. What time is it? I think thank you so much. It takes a lot of effort, especially when you're watching us from Australia right now. I think it's late into the night. You're supposed to be asleep, but you're up watching us. Thank you, and we appreciate your continued support. Mika TJ Benny, you're saying that stupid man is corrupt, a criminal. He has to take money from money. Biafra is not for sale. Are you referring to Mr. Bede Eke, who said Biafra agitation? The solution for Biafra is to make sure that Nigeria has an Igbo presidency. Will that cure? Will that stop the agitation for Biafra? Will that bring justice to the people of Biafra who for a long time have felt as though they have been neglected by the national government, who have felt there has been a systematic neglect of that part of Nigeria. But now this lawmaker here in the House of Representatives, Mr. Bede Eke, came out and said, come on now, we cannot have these Biafrans continue agitating here for wanting to have their own country. I think the only solution and the only prescription that will be right for the people of Biafra is to make sure that one Igbo person becomes the president, whether man or woman, whoever they will decide, Nigerian people will decide to become the president in 2023. Talk to me. Let me know your thoughts on that. Bismarck Bura, thank you so much. You're saying at the moment, South Sudan is in a shame to Africa, no governmental system at all. Kir is everything in the country. He sacks constitutional post holders at will. Perennial interim constitution is where the problem of South Sudan come from, because it gives overwhelming powers to Salva Kiir. Imagine a country that doesn't have a pro-people's permanent constitution. There's no permanent constitution, because the country, after they gained independence in 2011, and then before they put everything into, they were working on the structures and modality, and before you know it, the war broke in 2013. So they had not settled down enough. It was a new country, a young country in 2013 when the war broke out there. So they didn't even work on their constitution. So now whatever Kiir says goes, I guess. And okay. All right, so our thoughts there with the South Sudanese. Mohaji Abdi, you're not agreeing with Biar Garang. Come on, what is that? I won't even. Oh, so you're telling Biar Garang that he should not be worrying about Riek Machar's security. You're saying he will be protected. But was he protected in 2016? Or this time around they learned their lessons? Perhaps President Salva Kiir has realized the importance of making sure that Mr. Riek Machar security is guaranteed and is protected when he returns to Juba. You think they will work? I want to believe that they have learned, the leadership of South Sudan has learned their lesson, and I really want to believe that. Yes, I want to believe that this time round, should Riek Machar return to South Sudan, then they should protect him, I think. Yes. And you're also saying that Kenya should be proactive. Is it? About what? Please talk to me. Mohaji Abdi, thank you so much. I want to know, Kenya should be proactive about what? Please, I want to, that conversation, they also want to know what's really happening over there. Mekanuke is saying the core value systems between the northern and southern Nigeria differs a lot. It is like bringing Afghanistan and Germany together. Well, a lot of Afghans have settled in Germany. Germany is one of the countries in Europe that has the biggest migration of Arabs, after the Arab Spring and the chaos that is going on in the Arab world. A lot of them are moving to in Europe, but in Germany, you go there and you're integrated into the society. When you go, you take your German classes, you speak proper German, and then you're able to work and you're able to go. So they have very perfect integration system, and that's why you hardly hear of radicalization there in Germany, especially with anybody who has migrated there, because when you go there, they make sure that you're properly integrated into the country. So it's like bringing Afghanistan and Germany together. Okay, so you're saying it will never work, Biafrans, but he thinks it's a very good idea. Better Eke here thinks, you know what? In 2023, having an Igbo presidency will put to a stop this Biafra agitation. He thinks that will be the solution once and for all. If you have an Igbo president that will go for 4 years, I think one term, the presidency term in Nigeria is 4 years, and if they're able to make it to 2 terms, which is the maximum 8 years, then Igbos should be cured. Biafrans will be settled. There will be no more agitation for Biafrans. And I'm inclined to think that the calls for secession for Biafrans is just more than an Igbo being a president or a Biafran being a president of Nigeria. I think there are more issues that have necessitated this call. So you talk to me and let me know. Yes. Jacob Ishioko, thank you so much. And Mohaji Abdi. Kenya should be proactive. I want to know about what. Sunday Emeka saying you're watching from Italy. Thank you so much for joining us. And you're saying you don't want any presidency. No, you don't want to lead Nigeria. But Mr. Bede Eke thinks it's a very good idea, and that will end the need for you guys wanting to have your own country and wanting to have your own system and wanting literally wanting to have your own country. He says if you, he thinks that the reason why Biafrans want to secede is because you've not had the presidency of that country. So he is imagining should 2023 the next presidential elections come and an Igbo president is able to be elected. I don't know if that is even possible according to Nigerian political dynamics. Please talk to me about it. You understand that better. But he's saying in 2023, an Igbo presidency will cure the call for Biafra and the call for secession and the agitation for Biafra. You keep talking to me. I can see you're not even happy with what Mr. Bedeke said there, charging from your comments this afternoon. I don't know why I keep saying good morning. It is afternoon here. A few minutes past 12 p.m. here in Nairobi, Kenya. Thank you so much for joining. The show is Good Morning Africa, and the TV station is Punchline Africa television station. Dr. Matanga was held up a bit somewhere. I was hoping he would join me, but let's just continue talking. If he comes before the show ends, it will be well and good. We miss him, I'm sure. And yesterday, some of you were asking about him here, and he was busy doing something earlier today, and he had hoped that he will join me 20 or 30 minutes into the show, but it appears perhaps a lot other things has come up, so he's dealing with that. So don't worry, Dr. Matanga is around. Nothing has happened to him and nothing will. But he'll be joining us soon, and if he does not, then don't worry, we will have our next broadcast. But keep talking to me wherever you're watching us this morning. We're just looking at what's making headlines across Africa, and we've looked at South Sudan and a new Dunning report that has come out and says the report's name is called "Do You Think We Will Prosecute Ourselves? No Prospects for Accountability in South Sudan." And the part of the report indicates that lack of independence has crippled the justice system in South Sudan, and that is according to the new report by the Human Rights Watchdog that suggests that government officials have allowed impunity to flourish over monstrous crimes. And by that, they say that the prosecutors only follow the directives of the executive. You all there who are arguing about Riek Machar's security and why he should return or not. That is the report. Please, let's debate on this report. So they're saying that the executive only, the prosecutors only follows the directives of the executive. And without such directives, the report says prosecutors do not investigate cases of human rights violations, war crimes, and crimes against humanity committed since the brutal conflict broke out in December 2013. And that also adds because last year, Transparency International ranked South Sudan as the third most corrupt country in the world. Now you see where that problem is coming from. When you have weak institutions, when the judicial system in the country is messed up, let me tell you, it's a free fall, as Dr. Matanga likes saying. It's a free fall. So, hey, let's talk about it. All right. Mo Haji Abdi saying it's a new country. Yes, indeed, South Sudan is a new country. And before they were able to just settle down and put good structures in place, the war broke up in 2013, and we see what it is today. But also, do you agree? There's another sentiment there that one of the legislators there in South Sudan, I think 3 weeks ago, she came out. Her name was, I think, Mary. She came out and said, the reason why we are here today is because the leadership of South Sudan is messed up, and there's no will to improve or to work or to want peace or to work things to change in South Sudan. And that will tie to the Century report that came out and said a lot of people were benefiting from this chaos in South Sudan. So as much as I am here holding my heart is on my sleeve right now and praying for peace and restoration of South Sudan and hoping that this peace deal this time round will actually hold and that the unity government will finally be formed, and the peace deal will come into effect come November, as these two leaders promised that they actually committed to meeting the deadline. They're actually people who are out there working overtime to make sure that the chaos in South Sudan continues, because that is how they benefit at the expense of South Sudanese, at the expense of the country. I think Dr. Matanga had asked me to print in full that report, the Century report that was done by George. What is it called? George Clooney and Pendergast. it was a damning report that mentioned companies from the US, from Britain, from China, even the name of the son of the former president, Arap Moi, now Senator for Baringo, Mr. Gideon Moi, was mentioned adversely as the people who have been gaining from the chaos in South Sudan. So while we are here fighting amongst ourselves, as I can see over there, and arguing, while we are here praying and hoping that their feet that were kissed in Vatican in April was supposed to bring in some miracle and some changes, there are people who are making sure and taking hardline positions and making sure that this peace does not even hold, because they are beneficiaries for this. Because should proper structure and leadership and democracy start, because it never started. Should it start, and should South Sudan, gain its ground and its foot and be stable, then they will lose a lot, because people are gaining. Arm manufacturers are gaining when they have to keep sending. Of course, right now there's an arms embargo, unless it's the UN. There's an arms embargo in South Sudan and other war-torn areas in Africa, but they keep sneaking. They still find arms there. So it's a man-eats-man society, by the way. So, Emeka, you're saying, why is the Nigerian government so scared of Biafra referendum? And they're afraid of Biafra freedom. That is Emeka, you're saying. Kenya should be proactive in South Sudan. We helped. Yes, Kenya should be proactive. I don't know what you do suggest Kenya do, and that you think Kenya has not done yet when it comes to South Sudan. Please talk to me, Mr. Mohaji Abdi. And thank you so much for your interaction today. And Bismarck, you're saying, Miriam, time is rare commodity here. None of the terms of their peace agreement has been implemented. And on 12th of next month is time for government formation. Really? It must be a joke for those poor people of the country. I know. And I told you, my heart is on my sleeves right now, because as much as you're sitting here trying to be optimistic, we have to also be very realistic. But they came out and they said, you know what, we are giving our word and we are committed towards. So let's just see. And remember, 2 months into the 6 months that they are given, Mr. Riek Machar wrote to President Salva Kiir and said he is worried that 2 months had passed and nothing had been done yet. So he showed some concern. So let's see how this will pay out. Let's just see if this will work out this time round. And I'm praying and hoping it does. Ogebe Moto Chan is saying, if Dr. Riek is not interested in the position, we will put his wife, Angela Teny, as first vice president. And you think she will, what? She will come there and, what? On behalf of her husband? Like she will go against her husband? I don't think so. I think her first loyalty lies with the husband, if I'm not wrong. I don't know. If I love my husband very much sometimes, yeah, you'll put the wife. No, you're trying to break that family. Because putting the wife there will be a recipe for disaster and chaos that you've never seen there in South Sudan, as if Mr. Machar will agree to that. But thank you for that, Mr. Ogebe Omot-chan. That's just funny. But Mohad, you're saying Kenya don't throw South Sudan, and we have not, and we have not. I think the Kenyan government is still committed in making sure that South Sudan becomes stable and they find the peace. And Sandy, you're saying that is not the solution. So what is the solution for a member of the House of Representatives, Mr. Bede Eke, wants Igbos to have the opportunity of governing Nigeria in 2023. Eke argues that allowing the presidency to come to the southeast will help to foster the needed peace, and the lawmaker notes that apart from Nnamdi Azikiwe, the zone has not produced a leader in Nigeria. He says that Igbo presidency in 2023 will put to an end the agitation for Biafra, and Biafrans this morning or this afternoon are not very amused with those statements because according to this person, he's saying the reason why you guys even want to secede is because you're not been given an opportunity to lead Nigeria. So for this matter to be settled once and for all in 2023, by all means, by fire, by force, there should be an Igbo president in Nigeria. So that will make you guys calm down. You talk to me and let me know your thoughts on that. Okay, let's see somebody else here. Let's see. Okay. I'm trying to find it. Okay, Mika TJ Ben, you're saying you're watching from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We, the people of Biafrans, we don't want president in the zoo. Called Nigeria. Kenya must lead in South Sudan, and Kenya has been leading. I think, like I said here yesterday, I don't want to repeat myself, because I also want us, in case Dr. Matsanga doesn't make it on time, just to look at the Kenyan newspapers and quickly look at the topic of the day here, because I was waiting for him for us to be able to discuss the topic of the day and look at the newspaper together as we look at the news on the Kenyan side. So yesterday we talked about this, about South Sudan and the commitment Kenya has had and other countries have had to making sure that South Sudan stabilizes, and the mediation process and the role Kenya has played, and not just Kenya and other countries in the region and across the world. But at some point, they're like, okay, fine, we can just come up to this far. But there has to be some willingness from the leadership of that country that really shows commitment towards wanting a stable country themselves and stability themselves. There has to be a will by the leadership of South Sudan. And even some parts of the member of parliament there, her name is Mary, I can't remember from where, but she came out and said the reason why South Sudan finds itself where it is today is because of there's a lack of will by the leadership in the country to make sure that the country is safe, to make sure that the country is stable. There's a lack of leadership, all right? And we talked about that yesterday. So you're saying nepotism, marginalization, and sundry of subjugation is embedded in Nigeria against Biafrans, and not a good day to say Gideon is involved. It's not a good day to say. But that is according to the report. Gideon Moi, the son, the now senator for Baringo, and the son of the former President Moi, who during his time actually, I think, chaired the peace during the peace deal and the peace before South Sudan became independent. Former President Moi really had a leading role into making sure that South Sudan, had negotiated and mediated. So, and a lot of those talks took place here in Kenya, in Nairobi, through that. So now his son is mentioned that his company there benefited. I don't know, he worked with the daughter of the son-in-law of President. I don't know. I'll bring the Century Report. Perhaps tomorrow, then we can look at it. Yeah, he's mentioned to have benefited there, among other companies, big companies in Britain, in the United States, and other people across the world. So people are benefiting from this chaos in South Sudan while we're here crying. And Mohad, you're saying South Sudan will be the conduit to break Kenya. Oh, really? In what way? Please. Hey, now you're worrying me. Let me know how. And Sunday, you're saying we don't want president to please Biafra freedom. You're saying BR Garang, you're saying Mariam, South Sudan citizens need the wife of late John Garang Di Mabior, but she's there. No? So you're saying, okay, BR, you're saying the wife of former of the late John Garang, who I think she's part of the peace talks. She's part of the entourage that had their feet kissed in Vatican. I saw her there. She's been part and parcel of this. Remember that peace committee? I can't remember the full name of it. The committee who was working towards realizing the peace in South Sudan, that were having the sessions in Juba, and they could not come from their own homes to the place, to the venue, but had to be put into expensive hotels in Juba. I think she was part of that committee. I'm not saying she's one of the people, but she's part of that committee also. So, yeah, she has been part and parcel of those talks. And she is. Yes, she is. So, yeah. So, Mohad, I think, was suggesting that we bring the wife. Was it Mohad or who was it? That was suggesting we bring that President Salva Kiir should take the wife of Riek Machar and make her the first, vice president. We cannot break that home. That will not work. That will not work at all. And Thorn Ayong Deng is saying we need to solve this problem by ourselves. Stop supporting rebels. That's all. Who is supporting rebels? Thorn, how are you? who is supporting these rebels, which, of course, a lot of players, and that's why people are saying that IGAD might not be the right body to making sure that South Sudan returns to, a peaceful place, because a lot of these countries and these different players that have been accused of supporting the different fractions of this war, they have a stake on this in this war, and so IGAD might not be the right outfit or vehicle that will bring South Sudan to where it should be, because a lot of countries here have vested interests that work against the bigger role, and that is to bring peace and stability in South Sudan. So I don't know if that is where your sentiment is coming from, Mr. Thorn Ayong Deng. You're saying stop supporting rebels, that's all. I don't know who is supporting rebels. There are different players, especially in IGAD. And right now, Mr. Riek Machar cannot even move freely in the IGAD countries. So he was saying now that they're talking about the peace deal and the handshake and the renewed spirit wanting to have the unity government, one of the things that should be done is to make sure that they lift the ban on him that has he's sort of under house arrest in Khartoum. He cannot travel to any IGAD country. Well, he cannot travel, period. You remember that time he went to South Africa, he was under house arrest there, and then they brought him, now he's in Khartoum. So it's very dicey there. It's very interesting that he's been saying, how about you lift this ban so I'm able to travel freely? And this is a conversation when you have it here with Doctor, and he says, if you lift that ban, Riek Machar might just disappear. You'll never see him again because Dr. Matanga has worked with him in several things before, bringing peace in Uganda, and there's some mediation, works before, so he knows him to some extent. So you're saying, if you lift that ban and you allow Riek Machar to just move freely, that he's a flight risk, so that might not be very good. But he's been saying now, in the spirit of just wanting to move forward and these new developments to be seen to be bearing fruits, can you please remove this ban that I may be able to move freely in these IGAD countries? And that has not been done so far, and I think that is the position there. So Chris Agunus Emekara, you're saying, please, Biafra is the solution. And Mohad, you're saying rebels are good, it is God-given. Oh, you think? But I think rebel with a cause is good. But when you're just rebelling for the case of rebelling and the impact is beyond, then I think it's a problem. But rebelling, when you want to be a rebel, but you're a rebel with a cause, I think it's good, and it's a good cause, something that you believe in, and people will benefit. It's good. But if you're just a rebel with no cause at all, with no agenda, or your agenda is not for the good of the people, then what's good is that? But a rebel with a cause is good. And Bismarck Bura, you're saying there are times when rebels become freedom fighters, Mr. Thorn Ayong Deng. Okay, there. So Biafrans, there, you keep insisting Biafra is your last hope. But one member of the House of Representatives there seems to think very differently. Mr. Bede Eka there has said that the solution for Biafra and to end your is to make sure that Igbo has a presidency in Nigeria. Igbo becomes a president in Nigeria in 2023, and that will calm your nerves. That will make you happy. That will be an early Christmas for you. That will be a gift from heaven, and that will solve all your problems there in Biafra. That is what this person seems to say. So that will put a stop to the agitation of Biafra and wanting to have your own country if should an Igbo be given an opportunity to lead Nigeria. Continue talking to me, and while you do that, it is always a pleasure to know where you're watching us across the world. All right. So right now, as I've been waiting for Dr. Matanga to join me so that we can look at, other matters here, let's just perhaps take a break. And when we do, we will come back and look at the topics. I think he's a bit running late, or he's able to join us. Then we can look at the Kenyan newspapers and some news and the topic of the day. And we continue talking about other matters concerning Africa. But right now, let me just take a very short break. Don't go too far. Good morning, Africa. We'll be right back.
Today, thousands and thousands of Africans and many countries in Africa have conflicts. Notably, from Libya, Cameroon, Nigeria, Biafra, and Boko Haram, to Democratic Republic of Congo, of where we have seen a resurgence of the past military and conflicts coming back in that country. Hundreds and hundreds of people have been displaced, killed, maimed, tortured, raped, several of them dying of hunger, starvation, and other natural causes. The fighting seems not to be ending. For the sake of Libya, the Libyan recognized international government is under siege in Tripoli from another faction recognized by Egypt, France, UAE, and other countries. Whereas the one in Tripoli is recognized by the UN, it has been bombarded, has been strangulated, and many millions of Libyans are dying of hunger, lack of water. The water system has been cut off. The bombardment goes on. In Democratic Republic of Congo, we've seen more of active rebel activities returning to the region after some silence has been observed. When we come to Cameroon, we see millions and millions of Amazonians slaughtered. Yet, when you come to Biafra, again millions and hundreds of millions and millions are worried, displaced, tortured by the Buhari regime. Yet again in the north, we see Boko Haram killing, maiming, abducting, and burning down villages in the same Nigeria. When you cross over to Central African Republic, the same is the history that has littered Africa. While all these events are taking shape, Africa is silent. Africa is not making enough efforts to find a solution to what is causing the problems in Libya, in DRC, in Cameroon, in Nigeria, Biafra, and now you add in Khartoum, Sudan. As people die, the people of Africa have no answers, have no solutions. There is nothing to bring an end to the conflicts that have killed Africa. We seem to be new ones manufactured, old ones reignited, encouragement coming from external powers. One power that has been seen in the shadows of all these conflicts, especially the one of Libya that has escalated in the Sahara region of Africa, is France. When you come to Democratic Republic of Congo, the same country is in the shadows. The war can be seen is France. When you come to Cameroon, in Amazonia, the one behind that has the key to bringing peace is France. Therefore, our question as Africans, why are we silent? Why are we not saying enough is enough of the wars? Thank you.
Welcome back. This is Good Morning Africa. We're just taking a a very short commercial break. We have about 29 minutes to go before the top of the hour. So I just want us to look at a few things that are remaining here. And I see the conversation here still continues on the topics that we've been looking at earlier today. And remember, we looked at South Sudan and the new, the new report that says, the government officials have allowed impunity to flourish over monstrous crimes there, revealing that prosecutors only follow the directives of the executive that is the presidency. And also Uganda. Earlier we started with that news where 6 broadcast stations in Uganda risk having their licenses revoked after investigations by the industry. Regulatory found that they breached broadcasting standards while covering events that followed the arrest of pop star and presidential aspirant Mr. Bobi Wine there, whose real name is Robert Changulanyi. And also we looked at, no, we do not look at Mozambique, but I think I read that news, but we have not looked at in detail. And also, let me see, we see the Ethiopia now reaching out and wanting to expand its telecommunications industry there. And there's only one service provider there, that is the what is it called? The Ethiopia, and it's government owned. It's monopoly. It's called Ethio Telecom. And so now they are opening the market to other telecommunications providers to come in. And we're seeing a company like Safaricom, which is the dominant company here in Kenya, MTN Group, Orange and Vodafone showing interest and wanting to go and bid for the licenses there in Ethiopia. And also we've looked at Cameroon, where people who have been detained in Kondegui prison in Ambazonia in Cameroon there have been released. And so since Friday, the release of opposition leader Mr. Maurice Kamto, another 333 people have been released from jail there. And now, before we took a break, we were talking about Biafra, something that has not made Biafrans very happy this morning or afternoon. This is after a member of House of Representatives, Mr. Bede Eke, said that to bring a stop to the Biafra agitation, an Igbo presidency should be allowed in 2023, and that will cure the agitation for Biafra there in Algeria. So you talk to me and let me know your thoughts. And we also talked about Ghana, and when it comes to in the law profession there, they're saying yesterday there was a protest by law students there in Ghana because they're protesting against a mass failure and of what they call elitism. So out of 1,820 students, only 128 passed the 2019 law school entrance exams, and that's representing a 90% failure, which I think should that figure be true, that should worry the government. And they're saying only the students that were elected from the elite families, people who know who are able to bribe their way, who are able to buy their way into these institutions and to pass these exams. So they were striking, they were protesting yesterday, and I think we had a similar scandal here. Only not and it had nothing to do with elitism, perhaps part of it, but majority of that was in Kenya, I think even out there, you study law for 4 years, and then you go to the Kenya School of Law if you want to become a lawyer in the High Court, an advocate in the High Court, or just a qualified lawyer. So you have to go to the Kenya School of Law for another 2 years. So they're saying that a lot of lawyers or Kenyan students that were being failed because the more you receipt for that exam, the more money the Kenya School of Law makes. So that is a scandal that also was facing the law, the legal body here in Kenya and the legal school here in Kenya. So we're seeing it's a problem across board. And also in Sudan, Saudi Arabia is the latest country to urge the United States of America to remove Sudan as, blacklist Sudan as one of the countries that is supporting terrorism. So Saudi Arabia is the latest country to make these calls. And yesterday we were having this conversation, and I told you that United States had come out and said that is something that they've been hearing, but they're not very keen and quick to do that because I think, as we were talking here yesterday, I think what they really want is to have Omar al-Bashir tried at the ICC. Remember, he has a warrant of arrest over his head over the killings that happened in Darfur, and so they've been wanting to try they have been wanting for Omar al-Bashir to be tried in the ICC, but even after his ousting, the government, and especially the army there, has come out and said, no, we are not handing over our former president to the ICC. He will be tried back at home. And for sure, we've been seeing Omar al-Bashir having his day in the High Court there in Sudan. So I think that will be the carrot that the United States is dangling. If you want us to remove Sudan from the blacklist as the countries that are supporting terrorism, have your guy come over and be tried at the ICC. So Saudi Arabia being the latest to bring their voice into this matter, will it change anything? Because we know Saudi Arabia has a very unholy relationship, very close unholy relationship with the United States. And will this add any weight? Will it make any difference? You let me know. So that is just some of the news that we looked at earlier. In case you're joining us, I was just bringing you up to speed. So now for the remainder of the time that you're having here. Okay. Okay, I see you. All right. Am I even able to read a lot of these, comments? They're coming in fast and furious, but I will read them. I will read them in a short while. So you keep writing to me, please. And it's always a pleasure to know where you're watching us from. And be our friends. I understand you're very annoyed this afternoon. Yes, but the guy thinks if you have a president, a neighbor president in 2023, you guys will shut up and will stop agitating for it to be free. But of course, we all know the agitation for Biafra goes beyond just Igbo people wanting to have a president there. I think the issues that are raised there are very legitimate and should be addressed. All right. So now there is a post that Dr. Matsanga made on his legacy trend today, and I'll just read some of it. This comes after, remember yesterday we were talking here when we were looking at the local news, and some section of politicians in this country were not very happy with the pronouncement that Honorable and the leader of opposition, NASA leader Raila Odinga, made when he visited the Likoni channel on Saturday, and he said perhaps the works that are continuing to expand the Likoni channel. Remember the mother that drowned with her daughter there from the ferry. So there has been some works that has been continuing there, and he said maybe those works need to be halted so that the retrieval of the body process can be given enough time, and the divers can be given the ample time and space to make sure that they remove the bodies of the mother and her daughter there. And so he appeared to have had made an order, and that according to part of the depending on where you inclined to. Others thought there was nothing wrong with what Raila said, and others thought, how dare you come here now and start making orders, and the president himself has not even spoken about this matter. The president himself, now they're saying, has not even bothered to go to Mombasa, to that place that the mother and the daughter are still there. The bodies have not been retrieved. Yesterday, the latest report, there has been some divers from South Africa that has arrived at the scene and are trying to help the family. And of course, the government in its efforts is trying to retrieve the body. All right? Good. So now this is what Dr. Matsanga says. I'll just read you partly. He's responding to that. A few of the key points here that I have from some writings he made this morning, and he says, the legacy trend has had some politically correct individuals with political diluted rhetoric in the Kenyan society condemning President Uhuru Kenyatta for not appearing in Mombasa to oversee a rescue mission. Surely, what has gone wrong with society? So he's wondering why are some politicians demanding for the president to go to Mombasa, to the site where that lady and her daughter, lost their lives. They're still deep in their car. They're still under, the water there, and they're trying to get the body out. So there has been people who are wondering, why hasn't President Kenyatta found his way to Mombasa, and Dr. Matsanga here is wondering, and why would they want him to go there? So why? And also another point, he's saying the legacy trend wants to tackle this matter of condemning Raila for acting as a Kenyan, and Raila had and has has a right like any other Kenyan to do so. What Raila said in Mombasa on the Likoni ferry disaster was clear wisdom of an elderly in society. All right. Remember, these are Dr. Matsanga's sentiments, and that he said expressed in regards to this matter that now some politicians seems to be blowing out of proportion. I don't even think he meant like you guys need to stop. I don't think he made it like it's. I don't know. So people seems to be now taking this and running it. It appears that is what is happening now. And now the political scene has found something else to charge them and, for them to go around talking about. So the legacy trend knows that Raila is a Kenyan entitled to an opinion on the happenings in any part of the country and therefore has not need to get permission to say what he wants to say. He is a leader who's standing in the community, entitles him to tell anyone to stop an accident. Okay. And secondly, Raila, as an AU high representative on infrastructure, or certainly has a stake to talk about infrastructure in Kenya and elsewhere in Africa. He can speak from any point that could bring accidents. He's a member of ODM, whose party governs the part of Mombasa where he spoke from. Okay. And also the word order can be used by the MP or any officer who is at that locality and does not take away the authority of the president, because the presidential order is written in most of the times. And also another point, remember these are Dr. Matanga's sentiments. Another point, Dr. Matanga responding to this event, he says the legacy trend encourages many Kenyans to take such decisions to save wastage, to save lives, or to report corruption cases that destroys Kenya on a daily basis. Cheap and populist rhetoric has destroyed the good heart of Africa, the good hearts that Africa had. And lastly, any Kenyan can stop an accident. So Raila did nothing wrong to order the stopping of drenching the port. Remember the Bible, where Jesus said necessity has no law, the legacy trend concurs. All right, so those are sentiments of Dr. David Matanga. They are responding to what Raila said over the weekend that has seen the political scenes here in Kenya charged with people wondering, and why was Raila ordering for the drenching of the Likoni Channel to stop, and who is he to speak on such matters? He's not the president, he's not the vice president, he's not the CS for transport. What is he and why is he talking about this, and what is his interest? And if he thinks he wants to become the president of Kenya through the back door, as some have been claiming, then that will not happen. And anybody found to be taking up these orders, that person will be dealt with according to the law. But Dr. Matsanga gave his opinion on that matter this morning, and that is what I was just reading there for you. Thank you so much, Doctor. Wherever you're watching us, receive greetings from Punchline viewers this afternoon. So Lobolo Hiti Onyo Majielekwa. Oh my goodness, is this your government name? Do you have all of this in your ID, or is it just being fancy this morning? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then the last one is Irere. Such a long name. You're saying a very good morning to you from Denmark. Since the last show, a lot has happened in South Sudan as far as implementation of the revitalized. Oh, good. I have to look for that. It just disappeared, but hold on. I have to look for it. Oh, there we are. I want to know what has happened. All right. So we all want to know what has happened. All of us who have been here wondering and arguing, yeah? So you're saying a lot has happened since the last time you were on the show. Okay. Revitalized agreement on the resolution of the conflict in South Sudan is concerned. Oh, so this is the... All right, so the regime of Salva, now supported by the United Nations mission in South Sudan, insists that the new unity government be formed on November 12th. Okay, the SPLM-A into brackets IO on the hand is insisting that until all the outstanding issues such as security arrangements, the state of emergency, the number of states and their boundaries, among others, are resolved, the movement will not be liable to held responsible for any repercussions come November 12th. As we speak, South Sudan Army Chief of Defense Forces has retreated to a neighboring country to plan for escalation, which will be more vicious than what we witnessed following the July 2016. Please take note on that. Are you serious? Who is this? Lobolo Hiti Onyo. Okay, I don't know what to say to that. So if you're out there and you're South Sudanese and you're watching this morning, or you're just a concerned African like I am, please, that is the latest there that one of our viewers has shared. Emeka saying the Nigerian government closed down all the southern Nigeria under the disguise of fighting smuggling men, while the northern borders are open and smuggling is going on. And Mohaji Abdi is saying Bashir is protected by Saudi Arabia. Okay, and I don't know if you have time to get into this conversation. But remember, Saudi Arabia was very, very close to Bashir's regime, right? And there was a super minister, like in Kenya right now, Matiang'i is referred to as super minister. So there was like a super minister who was perceived to be above all other ministers in Bashir's regime, cabinet there. So even if other ministers wanted to speak to the president, they would have passed through this minister. I don't remember his name exactly. So apparently, this minister was a spy. He was a very close confidant to the President Omar al-Bashir. Apparently, he was a spy for Saudi Arabia and I think UAE. All right, and Bashir did not know. But the way he treated other ministers and the way he was acting made some people very suspicious under Bashir, and they started complaining to the president when they got an opportunity. Okay, so after rumors here and there, he finally fired this guy. I think it was in 2017. Forgive me if I don't remember the dates very correctly. And then after he fired this guy, immediately he fired this guy as his minister. Bashir fired this guy. Guess what? The guy moved to Saudi Arabia, and before you know it, he was given Saudi Arabian citizenship. Okay? So now after the chaos started and the protest started to have al-Bashir to step down, guess who was representing Saudi Arabia to come and mediate and have peace and all this in Sudan? It was his former minister that now was coming on behalf of Saudi Arabia. So you understand how messed up the situation is. So even it is alleged, and there's some records that have shown, it is Saudi Arabia that was actually providing the protesters now with money to make sure that Bashir leaves. Okay? And this comes after, you remember Saudi Arabia and UAE having a problem with Qatar, and even demanding for Qatar to shut down Al Jazeera. You know, Al Jazeera has become a very powerful. In fact, when you want to watch comprehensive news, just go to Al Jazeera. They do very good documentaries, and they cover the Arab world very, very well. And even the African continent, they're able to do that. And they do a good job. So they insisted Qatar should shut down Al Jazeera, and Qatar refused, all right? And of course, they've said Qatar is hosting terrorism, and we know, what do you call them? They are in Qatar, this militant group from Afghanistan, the one that Trump wanted to meet the other day. Okay, I can't remember everything right now, but just write it there if you can remember the Taliban, yeah? The leadership is hosted in Qatar, right? So now they were asking Sudan to take a stand. But Sudan was also benefiting from Qatar. So al-Bashir refused, all right? Because they knew, and also there are things that they wanted him to do and to remove some people in power in his government that were considered very strong Islamists who were his friends, especially, he came to power through a coup, so were his loyalists. So he saw these things that Saudi Arabia were demanding for him to do. Should he have done, his people would suffer. So now it's all a big. We can't even get into the details of that. So when you're saying Saudi Arabia protecting Bashir, I think they fell out towards the end of his regime. They fell out with al-Bashir because Omar al-Bashir refused to give in to some of their demands, and they made sure that they were actually now the ones funding. They were the ones funding now the protesters the protests that have them come out. So, and Mohaj, you're saying that is why Qatar has no airspace. Yes, because after that ban, yes, that was a problem. So that is what is happening there in Sudan. So there's a lot of politics there at play, especially the different interests in the Arab world. So you go read. Mohaj, you're saying there, Miriam Lan. You also go go find out the role Saudi Arabia had in terms of toppling Omar al-Bashir. You think they're in bed together right now? Or perhaps the new regime together? So they're protecting Omar al-Bashir. All right, because even when Omar al-Bashir was testifying in one of his court proceedings there, about the huge money that was found stashed in his house, he came out and said this money was given by Saudi Arabia actually. So the Saudi Arabia, crown prince, I think, no, before that, they came with a private jet into Sudan. His money was given, so he said he was given the money from Saudi Arabia, but that was before he fell out with Saudi Arabia, because there are demands that Saudi Arabia were making, especially with Sudan's ties with Qatar, and Saudi Arabia was not very happy that Sudan did not take a stand when other countries had taken a stand against Qatar, and they were not happy that Sudan refused to take a stand. So, but there are also other political surroundings and dynamics in this story. So thank you so much there, Mohaji. Emeka Nweke, you're saying the former Benin President Soglo said that Saudi Arabia and Qatar are financing Boko Haram terrorists. The threat is real because Boko Haram are now extending their attacks to other African countries. Lately in Mali, yes, and I think we were dealing with the Mali issue here yesterday and we talked about it. Yes, indeed. Mohaji asking me to shoot. Really, I've been talking for nearly 2 hours. I don't even have the energy right now. But please just type there and then we will talk about it. But Thong, unless they're back together, but they used to be very close. But at some point they fell out. So perhaps they're still there influencing and making sure al-Bashir does not go to the ICC. Perhaps because he'll go there and spill a lot of beans. Should he go there to testify? Because they are working together. But thank you so much. All right. So Thong Ayong, then you're saying bad government is challenged politically and taking arm is doubling more problems. I believe so 100%. And at the end of the day, it is the innocent people that get to die. So thank you so much and for your company this morning. Thank you so much for engaging with me. We've talked a lot here and we looked at various matters and issues affecting Africa this morning, looking at different countries, and I'm not taking a break. I'm done with the show, Mohaji. It's normally 2 hours. If you check there, it's a few minutes past 2 hours. I started at 11 there, at the top of the hour at 11. So now it's a few minutes, or it says at 1 p.m., about 3 or so minutes to 1 p.m. So we are about done here. So I want to thank you so much. Lobolo, here you're back and you're saying greetings once more. Yes, I'm a South Sudanese, and yes, there are many real names, of course. They're your real names, all of that. You're just one lucky person. So you're saying just like that one of Lonyangapuo of West Pokot, but Lonyangapuo is one name. But all of this, Lobolo, Hiti, Onyo, Majileikwa, Lokwahu, Irere. Okay. All right. Then good for you. I only have 3. All right. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for your company here, Emeka Nweke. Thank you so much. And I appreciate your support. Mo Haji Abdi, thank you. You've been very engaging today together with Emeka Nweke. Thank you there. Lobolo, I will not even say the rest of your names, but I appreciate you this afternoon. Why do I keep saying good morning? Thong Ayong, the rest of you, so many up there. I can't even go back. But thank you so much. Can we meet here again tomorrow for another edition of Good Morning Africa? And if there's something out there you want us to talk about, a topic you want us to tackle that covers Africa, please, you're free to share with us there. So tomorrow when I come, we can talk about it. Latest development from any country across Africa and how it relates with the rest of us. We can talk about it. So thank you so much for engaging with me and for being a great company. Let's meet again tomorrow here for another edition of Good Morning Africa. From me right now, Miriam Gutu, I sign out.